It began at dusk. Not the kind that paints skies in soft orange hues, but the kind that arrives unannounced, bruised, sudden, cold. At the foot of an old wooden bridge, Ethan stood frozen, the letter still trembling in his hand. Parchment was old, the ink faded, but the words were razor sharp. You were never mine to begin with. His mother's handwriting, unmistakable. Behind him the river roared like distant thunder, but inside everything was silent. Not a bird, not a breeze. Just the dull throb of disbelief echoing in his ears. Ethan's breath caught. His jaw trembled, but the tears did not come. Instead, the silence swallowed him whole. The world, once tethered by familiar truths, now cracked underfoot. Who was he, if not her son? What had been real? The bridge groaned beneath him, as if mourning too. A life built on love, now bent into betrayal. In that moment, Ethan did not scream. He simply closed his eyes. And everything he thought he was fell away like autumn leaves. When the silence settled, it wasn't gentle. It pressed on Ethan's chest like a stone slab, heavy and final. He turned from the bridge with mechanical stiffness, his mind unwilling to replay the words on the page, but unable to forget them. Around him the world had lost its color, trees dulled, air still. The birds which once filled the valley with dawn's music had vanished. Ethan walked slowly down the path into the woods, his boots crunching damp soil. Each step sounded louder than it should, like echoes in a cathedral. He was not crying. Not yet. He was unraveling inwardly, strand by strand. And with each unraveling thought, his past, his mother, his name, all felt foreign. The trees closed in. Shadows stretched longer. He did not know where he was going, only that the world he had known was gone, replaced by questions and a silence that refused to leave. There had always been something strange about the woods. As a child, Ethan felt the trees listened. Now they loomed. The letter still sat in his pocket, burning through fabric like a brand. He stopped near a fallen log, a place once sacred in childhood memories, where stories were told and secrets buried. Now, it felt haunted. He knelt, reaching under the log, and retrieved a rusted tin box he hadn't touched in decades. Inside, brittle photographs and a locket. But the locket was unfamiliar. He opened it. Inside, a portrait of a man he'd never seen. Beneath it, a torn slip, "Your father." Ethan's breath caught again. The silence roared louder than the river now. With trembling hands, he placed the photo back. The past was collapsing, one forgotten truth at a time. Night approached. The forest darkened in shades not found in daylight. Ethan didn't move. He stared at the locket, still open, still foreign. The face inside, stern eyes, deep lines, unfamiliar yet intimate. His heartbeat sounded wrong, too loud. Around him, crickets began to chirp, as if reclaiming space from the silence. "Your father," he whispered. But it didn't make sense. That man wasn't in any memory. Had he been lied to all along? Was the woman who raised him ever truly his mother? The questions no longer whispered, they screamed. Yet Ethan stayed rooted. Not from fear, but from disorientation. When the wind returned, it didn't howl. It exhaled, as though the forest knew. He rose slowly. The box returned to the earth, buried beneath roots now gnarled with age. The locket he kept, not out of sentiment, but necessity. He needed to know, needed to unearth what had been hidden, stolen, denied. The bridge behind him was out of view, but its weight remained. He walked deeper into the woods, where light rarely touched. Each step forward was a step away from illusion. Ahead, a soft glow shimmered between the trees. Ethan paused. A shrine? A firefly cluster? It pulsed like a heartbeat. Drawn by something older than truth, he followed. Ethan's footsteps slowed as he ventured deeper into the woods. The soft glow that once beckoned now flickered uncertainly like a distant star struggling through clouds. His heart was a hollow drum in the silence, each beat echoing the growing void inside. Memories surfaced, his mother's lullabies, the warmth of a forgotten embrace, but they felt like echoes from a life that belonged to someone else. He was a stranger to his own soul. The weight of abandonment pressed down, the unanswered questions a constant ache. Yet beneath the sorrow was a fragile ember. Hope. A hope that the silence could be broken, that truth could be reclaimed from the shadows. As he reached a clearing bathed in pale moonlight, Ethan knelt, hands splayed on cold earth, seeking some anchor in the dark. The silence wrapped around Ethan like a shroud, yet beneath it, something stirred. A faint whisper carried on the wind, indecipherable, but persistent. He rose and followed the sound, each step tentative yet determined. The trees seemed to lean closer, their branches reaching like long fingers trying to touch secrets buried deep. His breath fogged in the cold air, mingling with the mist that swirled at his feet. Memories blurred with the present, the laughter of childhood friends, the sharp sting of betrayal, woven into a tapestry of loss and longing. Ethan's hands trembled as he reached out to brush aside a curtain of ivy, revealing a weathered stone altar. Time had forgotten this place, but it had not forgotten him. A soft glow pulsed from the altar's center, calling him forward into the heart of the silence. At the altar, Ethan's fingers traced the worn carvings, symbols he did not understand but felt drawn to, as if they held the key to his fractured past. His eyes closed, the chill of the night fading into a strange warmth spreading from his core. Memories flickered like distant flames, his mother's gentle hands, a father's shadowy absence, a childhood suspended between truth and silence. The altar seemed to pulse with an ancient rhythm, syncing with his heartbeat, beckoning him to listen beyond words. In that moment, Ethan understood. The silence was not empty, it was alive. It held the space where pain, hope, and forgotten love intertwined. He opened his eyes with newfound resolve, ready to face the truth buried in the stillness. The wind shifted, carrying a faint melody, fragile and haunting, like a distant song remembered from a dream. Ethan's breath caught. The forest seemed to hold its breath as he followed the sound, weaving between trees now bathed in silver moonlight. The melody grew clearer, a voice whispering in a language half forgotten, stirring memories beneath layers of time. He stopped at the edge of a small pond, its surface still and mirror-like. Reflected in the water was not just his face, but the shadows of a past he had long avoided. The song wrapped around him like a balm and a challenge, a call to remember, to forgive, to heal. Ethan knelt beside the pond, the silence around him no longer a void, but a sacred space waiting to be filled. As dawn crept at the forest's edge, Ethan remained by the pond, cradling the quiet that had once crushed him. The first hints of light wove through the branches, painting the world in soft pastels. He felt a fragile peace, a moment suspended between night and day, loss and renewal. The silence was no longer a prison but a sanctuary, a place where wounds could breathe and begin to mend. Ethan's heart, once heavy with betrayal, now carried a small flame of acceptance. The journey ahead was uncertain, but for the first time he felt ready to walk it. He stood slowly, casting one last look at the water's reflection, face changed by sorrow and hope alike. Then, with steady steps, he turned toward the path leading out of the woods, toward whatever awaited beyond the silence. The forest's embrace loosened, but Ethan's inner turmoil tightened like a noose. Shadows of his past clawed at the edges of his mind, his father's absence, his mother's silence, the cold distance that shaped his childhood. Each memory was a shod, cutting deeper with every thought. He stumbled onto a worn path, overgrown and forgotten, as if the world itself tried to hide what came next. Anger simmered beneath his calm facade, a storm held in check. The questions gnawed relentlessly. Why had he been abandoned? Was love ever real? Could he forgive those who broke him? The wind whispered doubts that tangled with his hope, twisting it into pain. Ethan clenched his fists, the weight of fractured family ties pressing down. The war within was no longer silent. It was a tempest, demanding to be heard. Voices from the past echoed unexpectedly. Fragments of arguments, laughter twisted into harsh words. The cold gaze of a father who left without goodbye. Ethan's breath quickened. The ghosts of old wounds hovered in the air, intangible yet suffocating. He stopped beside a broken fence, the remnants of a home long deserted. His fingers traced the splintered wood, raw and jagged, much like the feelings inside him. The silence that once comforted now felt like judgment. His mother's whispered apologies haunted him, never spoken aloud but etched in every unspoken moment. Ethan's chest tightened. The past was not just memory, it was a living weight threatening to drown him. Yet within the storm, a flicker of defiance glimmered. He would not be broken. Not this time. Anger rose like wildfire. Ethan's voice, barely a whisper at first, grew louder in the solitude. "Why did you leave?" he muttered, the words carried away by the wind. He pounded his fists against the trunk of an ancient tree, the bark cracking beneath his rage. The forest seemed to respond, branches shaking, leaves swirling in a chaotic dance. His tears finally broke free, mingling with rain that began to fall, cold, relentless. The tempest inside mirrored the storm outside. Memories twisted between love and betrayal, hope and despair. Ethan's soul felt fractured, torn between the desire to heal and the urge to shatter the very pieces of his past. The silence he once sought was now drowned in noise, his own, raw and unforgiving. Exhausted, Ethan collapsed to the forest floor, rain soaking through his coat and skin. The fury ebbed, replaced by a hollow emptiness that seeped into his bones. He curled into himself, the cold earth grounding him amid the chaos. Shadows flickered in the dim light, faces from his past, memories that refused to fade. The silence returned, but now it was heavy, laden with grief and regret. Ethan's thoughts spiraled between forgiveness and bitterness, between holding on and letting go. The battle inside him was far from over, but in this fragile moment, a quiet surrender whispered through the trees. He was broken, yes, but also human. And somewhere deep within, a seed of resilience took root, waiting for the storm to pass. The storm's fury faded with dawn, leaving a fragile calm. Ethan rose slowly, his body stiff but his spirit quietly unbroken. The forest around him shimmered with fresh light, every leaf and blade of grass sparkling with dew. He looked ahead, the path no longer hidden but clear enough to follow. The wounds remained, etched deep, but so did the determination to heal. With a deep breath, Ethan took his first step forward, carrying the scars and the silence as parts of himself. The conflict was not yet resolved, but the battle had shifted, from rage to acceptance, from despair to cautious hope. The journey was far from over, but for the first time Ethan felt the stirrings of peace amid the turmoil. Ethan's footsteps faltered as the forest began to thin, revealing a clearing bathed in an ethereal twilight glow. There, nestled amid ancient oaks, stood a weathered cottage, forgotten by time but not by memory. The door creaked open before he could reach it, and from the shadows emerged an old man, eyes bright with both kindness and sorrow. "I've been waiting," the man said softly. Ethan's breath caught. The stranger's face held the lines of his own, familiar yet foreign. A truth hidden beneath years of silence rippled through him. This man was not a stranger. He was the father Ethan never knew. The revelation shattered everything. Love and betrayal, entwined in one fragile moment, leaving Ethan suspended between clarity and confusion. The old man's voice trembled as he spoke. "I left to protect you, to shield you from a darkness no child should bear." Ethan's mind reeled. The years of abandonment now took on a new shade, sacrifice not neglect. Memories flickered, fragments of whispered conversations, a mother's tears, a hidden letter never sent. The pain of absence mingled with a strange tenderness. Ethan's heart wavered between anger and understanding. The man reached out, not for forgiveness but for truth. "You must decide who you want to be," he said. Ethan's silence spoke volumes. The lines between villain and savior blurred, leaving him to grapple with the complexity of love's shadows. Ethan stepped inside, the air thick with memories and dust. The walls bore faded photographs, faces intertwined with his own story, but with unfamiliar names. On a small table lay a worn journal, its pages yellowed and edges curled. He opened it with trembling hands, reading words penned in a familiar script, his mother's. The pages revealed secrets, stories of love, lost, sacrifices made, lies told to protect. Each revelation cracked a foundation of what Ethan believed. The silence he had carried now echoed with voices long buried. The past was not a simple tale of pain, but a tapestry woven with complex threads. Ethan realized the journey was not just about uncovering truth but embracing its messiness. The night deepened as Ethan sat by the fire, journal open, heart heavy, yet awakening. The old man spoke softly of choices and consequences, of love that could wound as deeply as it healed. Ethan's thoughts swirled. Was the mother who raised him flawed or heroic? Was the father's absence betrayal or protection? The lines blurred until certainty dissolved. In the quiet between words, Ethan found a fragile peace, not from answers, but from acceptance of complexity. The silence now held space for questions, contradictions, and the messy beauty of human bonds. The revelation did not end his journey, but transformed it, lighting a new path forward through shadows and light. As dawn's first light crept through the window, Ethan stood at the threshold, the old man's words echoing in his mind. He carried no certainty, only the weight of truths once hidden and the strength to face them. The father he never had, the mother he thought he knew, both flawed, both human. Ethan stepped outside, the forest awakening around him, alive with possibility. The silence that once crushed him now whispered of growth and transformation. The hidden reveal was not an ending, but a beginning. A fractured soul learning to hold its own story, unedited and whole. With every step into the waking world, Ethan embraced the paradox of pain and love, ready to write the next chapter in the sound of silence. Ethan's journey had led him to a precipice, where past and present collided with the force of a storm. The silence around him shattered as he confronted the weight of all he had uncovered. Anger, grief, and confusion swirled in his mind like a tempest. He stood at the edge of a cliff overlooking the wild sea, waves crashing below in furious rhythm. "Why?" he cried into the void, voice raw and desperate. The wind tore at his coat, the sky darkening with gathering clouds. In that moment, Ethan faced not just his father's absence or his mother's secrets, but the broken pieces of himself. The battle inside reached its crescendo, a violent clash between the self he had been and the self he needed to become. The tempest inside Ethan burst forth. Tears mingled with rain as he screamed into the storm, releasing years of buried pain. His voice echoed against the cliffs, raw and unfiltered. The earth beneath him seemed to tremble in response, a physical manifestation of his breaking. Yet amid the chaos, a fierce clarity emerged. He realized the anger was not his enemy, but a catalyst, a fire purging the old, clearing the path for renewal. As the storm raged, Ethan felt the weight of silence lift, replaced by a tumultuous roar of awakening. The pain was real, but so was the power within him to transform it. In the heart of destruction, he glimpsed the first spark of redemption. Exhausted, Ethan sank to his knees, the wind howling around him like a primal chorus. The storm mirrored his inner collapse and rebirth. In the chaos, he felt the presence of something greater, a whisper of peace beneath the rage. He closed his eyes, breathing deeply, surrendering to the moment. The sharp edges of pain softened, replaced by a quiet strength. He understood now that to heal, he must let go, not of memories, but of the need to control them. The self he had fought so fiercely to protect needed to be shattered, not saved. From the ruins, a new Ethan would emerge, scarred but whole, silent yet alive. The storm began to subside, leaving a charged stillness in its wake. Ethan rose slowly, water dripping from his hair and clothes. The horizon cracked open with the first fragile light of dawn, soft pastels bleeding into the gray. He took a tentative step forward, each movement deliberate and measured. The battle had changed him. The silence no longer a cage, but a canvas. His soul felt raw, vulnerable, yet fiercely alive. The confrontation was not an end but a transformation, a rite of passage from shattered silence to awakened being. Ethan's heart, once bound by rage and grief, now pulsed with a new rhythm, one of acceptance, resilience, and hope. As the sun rose, painting the world in gold, Ethan looked out over the endless sea. Vast, unpredictable, yet beautiful in its wildness. The silence inside him had transformed, no longer an absence but a presence filled with lessons learned and wounds honored. He knew the journey ahead was long, fraught with uncertainty, but for the first time he was ready. Ready to carry both pain and peace, loss and love. The storm had shattered his old self, but in its wake, something new breathed life. A soul reborn in the sound of silence. With steady steps, Ethan turned from the cliff's edge and walked into the light, his story unfolding anew. The days following the storm passed in quiet reflection. Ethan found himself at a small seaside village, far from the cliffs and wild forests. The air was thick with salt and the soft hum of daily life. He watched fishermen mend nets and children chase the tide's edge, their laughter a gentle balm. The silence inside him no longer pressed like a weight, but settled like a soft blanket. Memories still whispered in the corners of his mind, but they no longer defined him. He sat by the shore each morning, breathing in the steady rhythm of waves, learning to listen not for answers, but for peace. The journey was unfinished, but a new chapter had begun, one of acceptance, patience, and quiet courage. Ethan wandered through narrow streets lined with whitewashed cottages and blooming gardens. He noticed the simple acts of kindness that wove the community together: a smile, a helping hand, a shared meal. These quiet moments resonated deeply within him. The turmoil that once consumed his heart now softened into gratitude. He realized healing was not a dramatic event, but a series of small, tender choices made each day. The silence around him was no longer empty but filled with the hum of life. With every step, Ethan felt more grounded, more connected, to himself, to others, and to the vast unfolding story of existence. One evening, as twilight draped the village in gentle blues and purples, Ethan found himself at a small chapel overlooking the sea. The door was open, inviting. Inside, the flicker of candles cast dancing shadows on stone walls. He knelt in silence, not seeking answers but offering gratitude, for the pain that taught him resilience, for the silence that taught him listening. The chapel's quiet embraced him like a sanctuary, a sacred space between past and future. In that stillness, Ethan felt a profound connection to something beyond himself, a universal pulse weaving together every story of loss and love, sorrow and hope. The journey toward peace was ongoing, but in that moment he was home. Days blurred into weeks. Ethan's transformation was subtle, yet profound. He learned to hold contradictions without needing to resolve them, to carry sorrow and joy side by side. The silence had evolved from a void into a vessel, capable of holding his fractured soul. He spoke less, listened more, and found comfort in the ordinary rhythms of life. The scars of his past remained, but they no longer defined his identity. Instead, they were chapters in a larger narrative, one of growth, forgiveness, and quiet strength. The forest, the cliffs, the storm, they were distant memories now, parts of a story that had shaped but no longer shackled him. As summer's end approached, Ethan stood once again by the sea, the waves lapping at his feet. He looked out over the horizon, endless, mysterious, full of possibility. The silence within him was no longer oppressive, but a sacred space where healing and hope coexisted. He understood now that life's deepest truths often live in unanswered questions and quiet moments. With a final deep breath, Ethan closed his eyes, feeling the sound of silence pulse through his being, a rhythm both ancient and new. The journey was far from over, but he walked forward with a heart open to all its complexities, ready to embrace whatever came next. The seasons turned slowly, and Ethan's steps carried him beyond the village, beyond familiar horizons. The silence inside had settled into a deep resonance, a quiet song woven from loss, love, and the vastness of existence. In the stillness between breaths, he felt the echo of every story, every soul searching for light in the shadows. The world stretched wide and unpredictable, but Ethan walked with calm certainty. The journey that began in fracture now unfolded in grace, each moment a note in an endless melody. The silence was no longer absence but presence, a sacred space where the soul could breathe freely, and truth could be spoken without words. Ethan paused beneath an ancient tree, its sprawling branches heavy with golden leaves. He reached out, fingertips brushing the rough bark, feeling a pulse of timeless wisdom. The tree had weathered storms, shed leaves, and grown anew, much like him. In that silent communion, he understood the delicate balance between holding on and letting go. Life was a dance of light and shadow, silence and sound, endings and beginnings. The journey was neither linear nor final, but a continuous unfolding. Ethan smiled softly, the quiet strength of acceptance blooming in his chest. The story was his, yet it belonged to something greater, an eternal rhythm that carried all who listened. As twilight deepened, Ethan found a quiet clearing where fireflies danced in the cool air. Their gentle glow flickered like tiny beacons of hope, weaving patterns of light in the dark. He watched them with quiet reverence, remembering how moments of illumination often came in the smallest, simplest forms. The silence wrapped around him like a gentle embrace, not empty but alive with possibility. In this fleeting glow, Ethan felt a profound gratitude for the journey, its wounds and wonders alike. The past was not forgotten, but transformed into a source of strength. The future was unwritten, a canvas waiting for the sound of silence to paint new stories. Night settled gently over the land, stars sprinkling the sky with ancient light. Ethan lay beneath the vast expanse, the silence around him vast and intimate all at once. He felt himself dissolve into the cosmos, no longer separate but part of the endless dance of existence. In that perfect stillness, time lost meaning. Past wounds softened into distant echoes. The silence was a sacred song, a lullaby for the weary soul. Ethan's breath slowed, sensing with the rhythm of the universe. The final truth whispered softly through the darkness. Healing is not a destination but a journey. An eternal return to the sound of silence itself. And so in the sound of silence, Ethan found his truth, not in answers, but in the enduring question. The silence was never empty. It was full of all that words could not hold: grief, love, hope, and the infinite mystery of being. His journey was a mirror to every soul seeking light amid shadows, peace amid chaos. The story ends not with a conclusion, but with a beginning, an invitation to listen deeply, to breathe fully, and to embrace the sacred quiet where all stories unfold. The sound of silence is not the absence of noise, but the presence of everything that truly matters.